Put a name to the industry bad guy that nobody's talking about.
Wow, the industry bad guy. You're gonna cut this so I could give me time to think. Uh,
I'll make you look smart. Yeah.
okay, thank you. I think there's so many of them, that's the problem. I could name them all, but I like the first one that comes to mind is Mark Zuckerberg,
Hmm.
right? He tried to, the creation of Facebook, right, in and of itself, he called it a community. You can't have a community with 3 billion people in it. That's not a community, that's the world.
My name's Joel, and I'm a recovering nerd. I've spent the last 25 years bouncing between creative jobs and technical teams. I worked at places like Nickelodeon to NASA and a few others that started with different letters. I was one of the first couple hundred people podcasting back in the early aughts until I accidentally became an IT analyst. Thankfully, somebody in the government said, "Hey, you're a nerd that talks good." And that spun me off into the world of startups, branding, and marketing for the same sort of researchers and startup founders that I used to hang out with. Today, I help technical people learn how to get noticed, get remembered, and get results. On Nerds That Talk Good, I want to help you do the same. I talk with some of the greatest technical communicators, facilitators, and thinkers that I know who are behind the big brands and the tech talk that just works. Okay, look, so I know I've been gone for a little while. It's because of all the things. So let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up. Um, I recorded this interview like way back in October. I was very excited to get it out. In fact, I've got a whole bunch of interviews to share with you guys. And then I slipped, fell down the stairs, broke my ribs. I've been self-medicating. Um, and I just haven't had the opportunity to put together another podcast episode. But in that time, I did release the audio version of Be a Nerd That Talks Good, available on Audible and directly from me if you want a non-DRM version. So links in all the places. But I've been hanging on to this episode. I've been really excited. I've wanted to get it out. And then a friend on TikTok said, you should just release the damn thing. So I'm going to do that. So here is an amazing interview with Dr. Mara Einstein, who is this was probably one of the best interviews I've done in a very long time. I'm very excited to share it with you. So again, mea culpa. I'm sorry about the extended the extended hiatus. I will get back to releasing regular episodes. But you can support me. You can support my medication by heading over to nerdthattalksgood.com/book, picking up a copy directly from me. I also have the ebook version available, and as well as the audiobook read by yours truly. So that's it. Let's get into the interview. Today's guest nerd is Dr. Mara Einstein, marketing expert, media professor, and author of Hoodwinked, How Marketers Use the Same Tactics as Cults. She spent years studying how belief branding and big business got all tangled up, and what happens when marketing tries to sell us meaning. We're talking marketing cults and the stupid things that marketers do, basically. But before she was calling out the industry, she worked in it from Madison Avenue to MTV, so she knows the game from inside out. And now she's here to help us see how easily we all get, well, a little hoodwinked. Dr. Einstein, thank you for joining.
Oh, so happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
I've had a chance to preview the book. I'm so excited about the new podcast coming out.
Thank you.
I'm just so excited to see you getting the attention everywhere. And thank you for coming on here.
Oh,
Um,
that's nice.
I always like to start with the nerd origin story. So draw the curtain back a little bit and give us the path to where how you got here now.
Oh, that's so funny. This is the second time in a week someone's called me a nerd, and I guess that's not a way that I normally think about myself, but I guess I really am. It's just kind of funny. So, I guess I started my career as an actress, and, so I really thought I was going to do that. I was an undergraduate in theater, and then, it was 1980s and Hollywood, and everybody was going, to get an MBA, so I was like, "Okay, why don't I do that?" So I got my MBA, and I worked in entertainment for a while, and then I just realized, and I guess this is where the nerd kicked in. Um, I was in my 20s, maybe 30s, and I went, "I can't do this for the next 30 years. I'll go out of my mind." I need to do something that's gonna be more stimulating. And so I got my PhD while I was working at NBC. And, I originally I was always hoping to do something with media and religion, but I also realized at that point, because I was in my late 30s, and by that point I was ready to have my daughter and all of that, like, if I focused on religion, it was gonna take me a long time to get through the literature review, as they say, in Nerdville. And so I had done work in policy when I was getting my MBA. And so my actual first, my dissertation was, policy wonk stuff, nerd, right? And so that was the basis of my first book, and the work from that was actually used by the FCC in revising the ownership rules. So I guess that's the nerd story.
Wow, policy wonk got super deep. Yeah, I had a similar experience, theater student, and then, I discovered IT, and I was like,
Ah.
I'm just gonna do the nerd stuff." So, yeah, I it's surprising how many, recovering theater people I know, and in different areas. Um, how did you get into the advertising aspect then,
Mm,
and started to collect? So you're looking at policy, you're understanding, what is it, maybe levers of control,
right, right.
and then some time in the media.
Well, I actually, because I went to business school to run Hollywood, as it were, we were required to take classes in finance, and after 2 classes in finance, I went, "Yeah, that ain't for me." I was more interested in the psychology, right? And that's really what marketing is the psychology of persuasion. How do you get to move people in a particular direction? And it was while actually I was working at NBC that I began to see more and more research about how unhappy people were, and how dissatisfied they were with their lives. And I also knew that what my job was to get them to watch more television,
Right.
and that didn't feel great. And so that's when I decided to go back to school and get my degree. But in terms of understanding it as far as what what marketing is, how does it work, all of that sort of thing, that didn't happen until I really started. This was probably my second book, Brands of Faith, when I began to look at marketing in relationship to religion. And I was starting to look at how do people take on a new faith? And people, take a faith on and off now the same in a way that they never did before, right? Um, we used to talk about religion as being ascribed for something um, that you are given. If you were born Jewish, you're Jewish. That's it. Goodbye. Same thing. Baptist. You're a Baptist. You're never going to change. But what happened with the change in the media landscape is that you could try out religions, and as the technology changed, the different kinds of religions and the way that you could practice those faiths were very different. So, what we saw, for instance, in the time of radio, is that people could listen to sermons and they might find out about another faith that way, but they wouldn't actually have to walk into a different church, right? And if you have to walk into another space, you are proclaiming that you are perhaps walking away from the faith that you used to belong to. But what happens with television and then the internet is you have this ability to be able to pick and choose what it is that you want to believe in. And as I started looking into how people were choosing their belief systems, I began to think, okay, how does that parallel how marketers get us to take on brands as part of who we are?
Wow. Yeah, it's funny to me because, military brat, moved around a lot and grew up
Mm, mm,
in a church. And, then when you have your first little bit of freedom and you have the ability to sample and look around,
mhm, mhm.
and that was just kind of, when I was coming of age, that was kind of up in the 90s, the internet was available, and we were starting to see this movement towards, uh, customization. And I think it really was kind of
Right,
like the web 2, which is like your web experience is not the same experience as other people. It's now getting
right.
customized to you. Do you think I'm just sort of drawing the line a little bit further. Do you think we're now getting back into bubbles, back into isolation? Is that where a lot of interest in cults have come
Yeah.
from?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the what people often ask me, particularly marketing people, is there a way to use these sort of cult tactics in a positive way? And I always say the positive thing that cults really are offering is community. The problem is where are we finding community? And are we expecting these online spaces to create these communities for us? So is it a situation where I'm getting online, I'm in a social media space, I'm starting to engage with people who I want to have an interesting conversation with, but then I'm separated from anybody else who doesn't agree with me. And so that kind of isolation, that kind of polarization, one, isn't very healthy. And two, I don't really think is real community. Because think about your physical community. If I don't get along with my next door neighbor, I still got to live next to him.
Right.
So I have to find a way to get over whatever issues I might have. So I might say to him, you know what, that branch is hanging over the fence. Could you really do something about it? Um, and if he doesn't, maybe I take it to the next step. But I have to find a way to do it in a way I can still live next door to him. And that's something that we don't experience in online spaces because it's too easy to pretend that we're somebody else. And it's hard, oftentimes it's hard to figure out whether or not we're really dealing with a person or are we dealing with a bot.
Yeah, when we're self-selecting our environment and our community, and we can
Yes.
sanitize it, that sets us up for a lot of challenges. I want to run the tape back just a little bit because we jumped straight into cults because this is what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Can you, for the folks listening, what are the hallmarks of a cult, or what do you consider to be um, the red flags of a
Yeah.
cult? And then I want to talk kind of about your continuum from the cult through the brands,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the marketing, the cult marketing.
Sure.
But let's just lay some definitions out.
Sure. So when we talk about cults, there's certain steps, and I base my understanding of this on the work of Lauren Dawson, who wrote a book called Comprehending Cults, and I build on it from other people whose work I've read. But he talks about one of the first things that cults do is they look for vulnerable people. And so oftentimes the example I like to give is college campuses are a prime target ground to find people to be part of cults because you're in a new space, you don't have people that you're looking for community, you're looking for a place to fit in. And so somebody comes up to you and says, "Hi, come take a free meditation class." And you're like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds great." And the next thing you know, you get pulled further and further in. The next step in the process is to lure with deception. So this is why I got into this from my perspective in terms of the work that I do, which is my work is all about teaching people how to find deceptive marketing and then protect themselves from it. And I do that by teaching them about what I know about my many years of working in marketing. And so the deception can be that, come have a free meditation class or come have a free dinner or whatever it is. And you think that that's all it is. I'm just going to learn how to meditate. Well, then the tactics start getting harder and harder. So then it becomes upselling. Okay, you've taken a meditation class. Come take a yoga class, but make sure you show up every week. Okay,
Mhm.
you've taken that yoga class. Okay, well, if you really want to get good and you really want to belong to this group, then you've got to plunk some money down and take the 2-month class, right? And starts building and building and building. And then that's love bombing, surrounding people with so much attention that they don't want to leave. And as you start to do these things, as you upsell, so people make more of a commitment in terms of time and money, as they're surrounded with love bombing, as they're feeling more of the community, then it becomes harder and harder to leave. And one of the ways that groups do this is by separating you away from anyone who would tell you that what's going on in this group is not good for you, right? So
Mm.
they separate you. And traditionally, this has happened by putting people on a compound, either places like Waco or Oregon with Rajneesh or wherever it was, Guyana, right, with Jonestown, But they don't have to do that in physical spaces anymore because just like what we were talking about, the digital space does that for us. It separates us into groups who will only tell us what we want to hear. And
Yeah.
then they make it difficult for us to leave. And they finally tell us what exactly they are all about. 2 other key things or 3 other key things to include. Most cults will, but not all, most will include a charismatic and narcissistic group leader. Sure, you could think of plenty. We could drop in right here.
Yeah.
Um, the creation of in and out groups, right? So you're part of this group, so you're not part of this other group. So that's a way to define the group. And finally, an all encompassing worldview that answers all of life's problems. So no matter what you would respond back to it, they could say, "Oh, yes, but QAnon or MAGA." MAGA is a
Mhm.
great example. What does MAGA mean? Make America great again. It doesn't really mean anything. It means whatever somebody wants to put into it thinks that it means. But it, in and of itself, it doesn't mean anything because make America great again for whom? For when? At what time period? And so it's so open as to allow people to put whatever they believe into that statement. And so whenever somebody says, "Oh, but women are being hurt or immigrants are being hurt or children are being hurt." "Oh, but MAGA, we're making America great again." That
Right.
always becomes the response.
As I have a mental model of marketing messaging, and at
Mhm.
the top is kind of your singular big idea, and I have another card deck I'm working on, the periodic table of bad big ideas, which are the cliches,
Edsel.
the lazy ones, yeah, and it almost reminds me of putting the onus on the audience to bring their own meaning to it.
Mhm.
You're just directionally appropriate enough, and you say, I work with a lot of security companies. Secure what matters. Well,
Mhm.
what matters? Well, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Whatever matters to you, and that can allow
Mhm.
people to kind of step in and project their own
Right.
onto it. So thank you for that definition. I think a lot of us now are thinking through media we've consumed or documentaries and
Mhm.
things. How did you start to make the connection then to some of these cult-like brands? And you have some various levels of brand and
Right.
marketing. I'd like you to
Right.
sort of
Right.
talk us through that from the,
Sure.
oh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I want to buy some leggings, to now I have a big exercise bike in my shed that
Right.
I'm paying a subscription on, and like
Right.
we know the companies we're talking about, but
Mhm.
talk
Mhm.
about the different levels that
Sure.
you lay out in the book.
Sure. Well, the way that I got to this is that I was stuck at home during COVID, like a lot of us were, and I was watching a lot of documentaries on TV, and I was watching The Vow, which is the documentary about Nexium, and the Lula Rich, which is the docuseries about Lula. And so was watching them like back to back over the course of a couple of weeks, and I was like, "Oh my God, they're the same thing." A multi-level marketing company, i.e., a legalized pyramid scheme, is the same thing as a cult. And I was like brain exploded. And then as I started researching multi-level marketing, I discovered I was not the first person to figure this out. But um, as I began to dig into it more and more, and I began to say, yes, in fact, these two things are the same. And I did ask multi-level marketers and I asked cult experts if you had to create a Venn diagram of an MLM and a cult, what would it be? And they all said it's a circle. It's absolutely a circle. They're exactly the same thing. So then I began to think, okay, can we begin to think of this bigger, broader? I mean, I've been studying brand cults since the early 2000s. And so if we can think about MLMs as sort of the end of the spectrum, is there another side of the spectrum and what gulfs all of this? And so as I began to pull it out and began to think about it, I created this thing called the Cult Marketing Continuum. And on the left side of the continuum is brand cults. And so that can be things that a lot of people can think of. You think of Apple or Harley Davidson or Oprah, and those brands and brand cults have been around for a long time. But what we've seen, particularly with the expansion of digital technology, is the expansion in the number of things that we consider to be brand cults. Some of them are fairly innocuous. They're not going to hurt you if you're part of this particular brand cult, but some can get to be fairly dangerous. The next part of this process I call influencers, who I call cult light, because there's
Mhm.
influencers that people, develop followers, right? They have followers who believe in what they have to say, but most of them aren't necessarily selling you anything that's going to be dangerous. Where it begins to get dangerous are influencers who become conspiracy theorists. And this is where I begin to talk about conspirituality. And we particularly saw this during COVID, where yoga instructors and people involved in the new age began to talk about your body as a temple, and therefore we should be thinking about what we're putting into our bodies, and that suddenly rolled into being anti-vaxxers, which is a whole another story. And
Mhm.
then the last part of the continuum is multi-level marketing, which is what I call the canary in the coal mine when it comes to understanding the full immersion of marketing and cult. And as you move from one part of the continuum to the other, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily move from one to the other, but what you can do is begin to see the patterns that exist from one to the next to the next to the next. What also happens is it becomes more extreme as you move from brand cults to multi-level marketing. You also have an increase in anxiety. And so one of the key things that I argue in Hoodwinked is it's not that we live in an attention economy. It's not enough that somebody gets us to have our phone in front of us all the time. It's that we are so anxious that we have to have it in front of us. And then we need to do something to relieve the stress because we have it in front of us all the time. And so that's either to continue to doom scroll, which keeps us connected, which keeps us seeing more advertising. And don't ever forget, this is all in the service of advertising, or we release it by shopping.
Yeah, there's the FOMO is definitely real, and
Mm,
the dopamine hits. I've got a 15-year-old
mm,
who have been very good about keeping his algorithm pretty clean and
yeah.
monitoring his YouTube and where he's going. And he's even sometimes said, you know what? I kind of feel like sometimes the feed is he's very self-aware, and when he notices something, I'm like, well, it's probably a little bit late. You probably need to do some self-reflection, and I think that's kind of the power of what you're doing and the education that you're providing is, one, you're helping people recognize those patterns, inoculate themselves against it somewhat.
Mhm.
um, but I'm sure you also get a lot of marketers, a lot of people coming to you and saying, how do we wield these powers for good,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
said. And
Yeah.
is that possible? I
Yeah.
mean, I talk a lot about psychology and leveraging the caveman brain to get
Mhm.
people's attention,
Mm.
not to take advantage of, but that's our jobs as marketers. Is, hey, you got to get the eyes on first.
Mhm.
But where does a well-meaning marketer, or even just a business owner who wants
Mhm.
to learn how to be a good marketer, how do they prevent themselves from creating a
Fro
cult over
from
their over
going
their
going down
over
the
their
rabbit
SaaS
hole.
platform? Yeah.
Going down the cult rabbit hole, as it were. Um, there's I have a couple of thoughts about that. I've been thinking recently because I posted something on TikTok about how marketers have lost the plot. And what I mean by that is, particularly with the recent situation where Elf Cosmetics and American Eagle have done things from a marketing perspective that really ticked off their consumers.
Hmm.
And what they did is they said, "We're going to create this content. We know it's gonna piss people off, and that's really okay because ultimately it's gonna get eyeballs on our brand, and that's fine, and it'll lead to more sales and all of this kind of stuff." Okay, great, whatever. But that's missing the point, and this is what I mean by them losing the plot, which is getting eyeballs on your content works for influencers, and
Hmm.
that's part of the incentive system for influencers. They make money by getting more people to engage with their content, and the more views it gets, the more engagement it gets, the more money they can make from the platforms. The same is not true for advertisers, because what you're doing is you're creating content that is rage bait, that's getting people mad at your brand.
Yeah.
Like, who would ever do that? I mean, it just blows my mind utterly. I've been called an old-time marketer, and I wear that tag with pride, because when it comes to the fundamentals of marketing, you still have to do the basics. Who am I talking to? What are their wants and needs? How can I best deliver on those wants and needs? And how do I communicate a message that allows them to learn about my product and therefore like gets them to engage with it and hopefully like it and then tell their friends about it? That's the goal. That's what it always was. That's what it always will be. And I find this really also really interesting when it comes to AI. And this maybe you'll nerd out on this a bit more than I will. Is AI is a product without a want or need associated with it. Nobody's looking to use AI. It is a product that's looking for a reason to exist. And so, another conversation. But anyway,
Ab
so but, um, but in terms of cults and cult tactics, in terms of targeting the vulnerable, advertising and marketing has done that since the beginning of time, right? No advertising will tell you, "You're perfect just the way you are." Because if I tell you you're perfect just the way you are, you will never buy my product. You will never, ever, ever, ever try it. So there's a little bit of that that's already going on. The difference is you don't need to be deceptive with your consumer in order to get them to engage. What you need to do is find out what their wants and needs are and super serve that consumer. That's your job. Now, part of super serving them may be to create a community. And certainly that's something that people are looking for now in a way that they haven't before. And brands can be good at this. Before there were brand cults, there were brand communities. It's
Hmm.
just that the digital space, sort of as the digital spaces want to do, gins everything up on steroids. And all of a sudden it was like, no, you can't just be a community, you have to be a cult. But
Yeah.
you can be a community. You can create community for the people who engage with your products. The key issue is to not make it so important that they think that your brand is the be all and end all to everything in their life, because it's not. Um, and to make sure that the structure stays flat, right? That there doesn't end up being a leader who people fundamentally look up to, who they think is going to answer all of life's problems. That's when you start to get into problems.
Yeah, I feel like it's the turning up of the temperature, like
Mm.
back to Elf and American Eagle. Some of the reading that I did on that was the agencies behind that was not traditional
Agency. It was the same
branding.
agent. It was the
It
same
was the same
agency.
agency,
Yeah.
and it was a PR firm
Yeah.
primarily that was trying to step into creative work. And I think
Mhm.
like as you said, the plot and the goals are completely different between
Yes.
PR is get people looking and talking to me, and
Mhm.
brand is about building long lasting trust and brand
Right.
equity.
Right.
And so that's I, I hope we see people coming back to it. I hope
Yeah.
we touch the stove a little bit in the industry and people are pulling back. But there's a lot of consolidation
Mm.
of these larger companies, and so you do have well, we're a PR firm. We've purchased a little marketing company,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're going to run them like a PR
Hmm.
company. Um,
But I think, it reminds me of when I used to work in advertising, and we would be creating an ad and we'd produce the same thing we've been saying over and over and over again. We're like, "Oh, gosh, do we have to say this again?" And it's like, you're going to get to, what we always said, you're going to get tired of it before your consumer gets tired of it. And I think that's one of the things that's really missing in the marketing world right now, is to realize that you can keep saying the same thing over and over again. There is no need to recreate the wheel every time you post something onto social media. And social media isn't the only space you need to be. And people are getting tired of it. There's this new idea of post zero. And I think that's really gonna come into play more now as TikTok starts to become whatever it's going to be, which is people may not be on TikTok, and TikTok had initially this feeling of being a little dirty, a little grungy. You
Hmm.
could just, like, get on and post something and it would be great. But it's become more professionalized, and it's starting to feel a bit more like YouTube, and people are feeling like, "You know what? If I can't compete at that level, I don't want to." And so they're deciding not to do that and finding community in other places.
Yeah, TikTok started it very intimately, and it was
Mm,
it was trading videos between friends, and then obviously platforms do what platforms are going to do, and it became, a media channel.
mhm, mhm,
Which is interesting because now that we're seeing the fracturing of a lot of these digital channels, people have mass exodus from Twitter slash X.
mhm.
People are going over to Blue Sky. It's becoming a little bit of an echo chamber. I'm on Mastodon, because I'm a
Mhm,
nerd, so
mhm.
I like the Fediverse. We're fracturing. The internet's refracturing,
Right,
I
right,
think. Um, and finding community is going to be even harder, especially as
right.
people start to say, all right, well, do it on my platform. You have to do it on my website. We're getting
Mhm.
back into these walled gardens. Are you concerned about about more brands becoming cult like, or more opportunities for people to fall into these cults that are kind of in the shadows? We don't The dark web, as a cybersecurity guy, I tell people, I said, the dark net is not what you need to be worried about.
Y
It's Discord,
right.
it's forums, and they're all in the clear.
Yeah, yeah. Um A couple of thoughts about cults. Like I said, when we're talking about brand cults, if people are aware that they're engaging with the brand, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is detrimental to them. The other part of it is that there's a advertising agency called Strawberry Frog, and they talk about movements versus cults. And their whole idea is that you can allow people to engage in ways that they wouldn't be able to do on their own, but are able to do so through a brand. And so
Hmm.
one of the examples when I was talking to someone from there for my podcast was they were talking about this new credit union, and it was a female-led credit union. And obviously, that's something that needs a community in order to be able to work. And so they were creating the brand around the community. So there are places where you can do this. Can you do this for everything? No. But who wants to create a brand cult around toothpaste? I mean, there's no point in doing.
Well, I'm on that Quip subscription, and I can't quit Quip because. And that sounds like it's more, instead of a movement, it sounds more, or instead of a cult, movement sounds more like a fandom. Like
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
I can belong to many of them. No, neither one of them is totally exclusive,
Yes.
and I feel free to say, all right, I'm over here with this group, and
Mhm.
and then when I'm looking for, my jeans or whatever, I'm over here in this group.
Yeah.
Which, as I think about my experience in cybersecurity, we
Mhm.
had the kind of the platformization, and then the opening up where, well, use the tool that works for you. We just need a way
Right.
for them all to work together as a common purpose, which gets kind of circular back to that. What matters? Is
Mm.
it still important for brands to take a stand
Mhm.
at a higher level, as
Yeah.
opposed to, we're fixing your problem, but maybe the way we're fixing it is more important? Are we getting to the point where we are going to have, as business owners or marketers, we're going to have to take a stand at
Right.
at higher stakes, I might say?
Yeah. Boy, you're really good at tapping into all of my books, aren't you? Um, so many, many, many years ago, I wrote a book called Compassion Inc. And it's all about cause marketing, corporate social responsibility. And more recently, I do work in sort of purpose marketing slash purpose washing. And even now, people quote me because of that book because marketers still don't get this stuff right. At the same point, consumers are looking for brands to be embedded with values because we have turned to brands as for identity creation. And so, while we may or may not be connected to the church we grew up in, or we're probably are not going to have the same job for our entire adult life, we look for other places for people, things to help to define us. And one of the examples that I love to give when I talk about this is I talk about Tesla. And I talk about Tesla not so much because it's what people want to be connected to anymore. Some people do, but some people don't.
Mhm.
But there was a period a couple of months ago when people started taking the brand off their Tesla, or they started hiding it because they didn't want people to think that they were connected to that brand. And I think that that's a really powerful statement to say, the car that we drive, the computer that we use, the earbuds we have, on our heads, right? The pocketbooks we have, the Labubus that are hanging off, of our pocketbooks. All of those things are about telling other people about who we are and what we believe in and what we value. And so that's the value of a brand, and that's why brands really do still need to be saying who I am. But because remember what a brand is. A brand is the logo, a tagline if it has one, but usually they don't have one anymore. But it's the
Mhm.
mythology behind the brand. What is the story that people think of when they see that logo? When they see the Nike swoosh, what is the story that comes to mind? And that's why that iconography exists. It's not so you could just see the logo, it's so you can see the logo and immediately have an understanding of what that brand is and what they mean. And so for a lot of people, what that brand means is the best of athleticism, right? Because they automatically think of Michael Jordan and sneakers and all of that. And until recently, Disney was magic, um, though now it's kind of cancellation, I guess,
Yeah.
caving, right? But then brand work needs to be done to fix that, to get people to believe that you really are what you say you are.
So what is the type of brand work that needs to be done? For Tesla is a phenomenal example because
Hmm.
when the Tesla brand, not the CEO's brand, but the
Hmm.
Tesla's brand
Yeah.
was built on um, being new,
Mhm.
taking a stand on climate,
Mhm.
doing things. I mean, they were still a tech brand. They were cutting corners. I mean, we know they had
Right.
quality issues, but they were very much in the you want this car because we're the ones who are going to be building the future.
Right.
And then we've, not to get crazy political, but we've had a lot of high profile cult like leader activity from
Yeah.
Musk.
Yeah.
And that has damaged the brand to the point,
Mhm.
like you said, people debadging their Teslas. I spent last week in Houston with a client, and my friend who's working there had his brand new, now it's Texas. I was very surprised to see this in Texas, his brand new red, the latest in hardware and everything. And I'm sitting in this and going, man, this thing is so great. It really is a phenomenal piece of machinery, but I could never drive it. My heart would never be in it. And I'm the type of
Mhm.
person, when I buy a car, I'm like, who do I want to be for the next 4 or 5 years, right?
Right, 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 right.
What happens to people when they're in either a cult or they're in that cult like relationship with a brand and the script gets flipped on them? How do people react to that?
Um, it's a real specific things that happens, but it's a slow process to get into a cult, but it's also a slow process to get out of a cult, and I think that's also something that people don't necessarily think about very often, which is, there's this perception that people who get pulled into a cult are somehow less educated and, I'm too smart. I would never get pulled into one of those. The fact of the matter is we all could at some point in our lives get pulled into a cult. And the way that people get out of a cult is through these continual situations of cognitive dissonance,
Mm,
where suddenly engaging with that brand and what that brand stands for doesn't make sense to you anymore. Driving the Tesla now seems pretty cool. It's saving me money. I've already paid the money. I'm not giving any money to the dude anymore. I've already paid the car off, right? All this kind of stuff. But then I can also get to a point where, people might start attacking me
yeah.
because I'm driving this car, right? And so what happens is the this isn't agreeing with my belief system anymore. And people in this space talk about books on the shelf. So as you pile more and more of that cognitive dissonance, each excuse to yourself as to why you should continue driving this car or being part of a cult or buying a brand or not leaving an exercise program that is making you sick gets to a point where eventually the one last piece of information breaks the shelf and you say,
Mm,
"Okay, I can't. I can't justify this to myself anymore." And then you have to go. And so some of that, you know, what happens with that though, too, is there's a tremendous amount of shame. Because remember, we talked about people joining cults where you've broken away from everybody else. Anybody who would tell you that what you were doing is wrong, you've separated yourself from them. And so you need to then go back to these people who were your friends and your family and say, you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. And that can be very shameful for a lot of people.
so there's a lot of weighing between the pain and the shame of doing
Mm,
that, and the work of carrying the cognitive dissonance and the
yes,
inconsistencies,
exactly
and there
right.
just gets to a tipping point. That's fascinating.
Exactly right.
One of the exercises I do with my clients is, again, talking about the fundamentals. Like, let's figure out what your first principles messages are, so
Mhm.
that you have something to point to, so that you don't start going off the rails or
Right.
confusing the marketplace. And that's very hard, I think, for smart people, because we feel like, well, I know it, I can just shoot from the hip. But I
Mhm.
think people need to do the work to understand, like, is what I thought I was getting into, are we still there? Is
Mhm.
this, I see this especially as brands go through M&A and they start bolting on, and now what was a very targeted product or a platform is
Yeah.
now, a grab bag of capabilities, and the marketplace is like, I don't even know you anymore, like, you're,
Yeah. Yeah.
you've gotten too big. um
But can a
uh
brand talk about itself in one word? I mean, the best brands can,
yeah.
right? Volvo is safety. No matter what you do, that it's what you're talking about in terms of first principles, right? Volvo is safety. Disney has been magic, right? I'm trying to think of something. Nike as athleticism, right? Whatever it is, but if you can get it down to a single word, then you constantly can go back to that and say, okay, is everything that I'm doing as a marketer relate to that one thing that I am supposed to be to my consumer? And if you're not delivering on that, then you've walked away from your first principles.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I would love to take you through my through one of my
Uh
card exercises. I
oh.
warned you this
Okay.
was coming.
Yes, you did.
Um
Now I'm scared, but okay.
so just as, by way of reminder
Yes.
to you, and to the people who might not have seen me do this before. Very simple process. I help people figure out the difference between making them like you, understand you, and trust you. So heart,
Okay.
head, and gut. Stealing that from Aristotle. I don't lay any claim to that, although I did come up with the cheeseburger logo. And then what we'll do is we'll balance that by stepping through different levels of messaging. I'm just going to give you
Mhm.
one prompt from the top to the bottom, going from a high emotion, low density thought, like that one word or that one phrase, down to, we might get into the technical details. That's not super germane to our conversation now. So,
Mhm. Okay.
um,
But let me say, as long as you showed me a pyramid, what we didn't talk about it is that we went through all of the steps of a cult. We didn't talk about the fact that the same steps of a cult, if anybody's listening who's a marketer, should have figured out that that's the marketing funnel.
it's the marketing funnel. Absolutely. Yeah.
It is step by step the marketing funnel.
And that's what I tell people who are non-marketers. I'm like, you don't have to know everything. If you can just flip this way, get their
Mm,
attention and make them like you, give them enough information to get the next meeting, and build enough credibility to make the sale.
right.
That's marketing.
Mhm.
Everything else is just a framework some consultant is trying to sell you. Cards are available on my website. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, I'm back. You can't get rid of me. This is the part in the middle of the show where I do the thing and I show up the thing that I have. So again, This podcast is supported by me, means it's supported by you. So again, check out Nerds That Talk Good. You can find it everywhere on all of the platforms. And also, if you go to my website, nerdthattalksgood.com/shop, you can find the book, you can find the cards, you can find, I don't have it in my pocket here. I got one. Here it is. This is my very own personal Nerd That Talks Good medallion, which you can get there. So anyway, please support the podcast. The biggest way you can do that is by sharing, subscribing to it if this is the first time you've seen it, giving it a rating on whatever platform you're on, but also, doing the thing. So again, yeah, it's been a while since I've been on. I'm gonna really try to catch up. We've got so many great conversations for you guys. But let's get back into this episode, this interview with Mara Einstein, which I got to tell you, I had been looking forward to, and in editing this thing several months later, I am just like tickled pink, pickled tink, as they say. As they say, by this conversation. So let's get back into this session of the message deck cards with Dr. Mara Einstein. So we'll just answer from your perspective, as uh, your service and what you're doing.
Okay.
Just easier that way. So from a big idea perspective, what market paradigm have you broken or are you breaking?
Um, I would say I'm telling the average consumer how marketing actually works. And it's what's really interesting to me is and what makes it hard for me to do what I do is until people start to listen to the work that I do or read my books or hear me speak, it's it's the old frog in the
Hmm.
pond kind of idea. We are so immersed in marketing that everybody thinks they know it. I had somebody on my podcast who is a religion scholar, and I said everybody's had or most people have had some kind of interaction with religion, so they all think they know what religion is. But tell us what it is. Well, it's the same thing with me with marketing. If I actually say to people, "Okay, this is what marketers do," they're looking for your pain point so they can push on it. They wanna find out how you think and feel so they can create a message that's gonna lead you to tie into it. They are looking for, they're using sensory marketing. So they know that your olfactory sense is one of the strongest methods that they can use to get you to connect their brand to some other time in your life where you thought everything was wonderful. And that is a way for them to circumvent your brain in order to get you to like their product. And then if people are like, oh, no, they're not doing that. I'm like, oh, yes, they are.
Yeah. Yeah, just think about, I worked at a coffee shop in the mall in the 90s,
Mm,
pre-Starbucks, and it was like that waft of coffee. That was
mm.
a new thing that we hadn't had in a
Yeah,
retail space, and it was so powerful. Um I love that part of your book where you talk about the using the senses to circumvent and go do an end run around our new brain, and the
yeah,
caveman brain is one of my favorite subjects. So the next level down is the stories, and the way I talk about stories are these are how we connect to the experience of our audience. So
okay,
it's not just Joseph Campbell,
okay.
but in this one I will ask you about a villain. Put a name. Oh, my autofocus is just not working. There we go. Put a name to the industry bad guy that nobody's talking about.
Hmm. That no one's talking about.
Because if you can name it, you can slay it.
Wow, the industry bad guy. You're gonna cut this so I could give me time to think. Uh,
I'll make you look smart. Yeah.
okay, thank you. I think there's so many of them. That's the problem,
Yeah.
is that going back to this idea of brand cults have become the North Star for brands. And the reason why is they don't know if you're ever gonna see another ad again because we have done everything that we can to avoid engaging with marketing messages. And so brand after brand after brand has come up with ways to hide the message. It's like it's like hiding the egg, right? And so whether it's, um, I mean, I could name them all, but I like the first one that comes to mind is Mark Zuckerberg,
Hmm.
right? He tried to the creation of Facebook, right, in and of itself. He called it a community. You can't have a community with 3 billion people in it. That's not a community, that's the world, right?
Yeah.
You didn't call the people that you were engaging with your comrades or your pal. You called them friends. So suddenly it changed our idea of what a friend was, right? It's not the person that I get to talk to who sits across from me and shares my every hope and wish and dream and is with me when something good or something bad happens in my life. It's somebody I can engage with through a screen. So now we're friends. The share button, it's not, I'm giving you an ad that somebody sent to me, and so now I'm sharing, now I'm passing it on to you, right? I'm giving you a gift. So he has fundamentally changed our ideas of what these words are in our vocabulary that we use all the time. And so it started there. And then when it comes to talking about hiding the information, now partially Mark Zuckerberg, but I will also put this on the guy who found BuzzFeed was the one who started doing native advertising, and
Hmm.
native advertising are the ads that appear in your feed that don't look like that look like everything else in your feed. They're ads that are indigenous to the site within which they appear. And so the whole point of BuzzFeed was not to be a news site. It was to be a marketing site. And if you went on to Hoover's, right, which is the company that Wall Street uses to find out about companies to invest in and so on and so forth,
Hmm.
it's not listed as a news site. It's listed as an advertising agency.
Yeah. Every
So,
every platform is turned into advertising, and
yeah,
I think like that may be the villain. It is ad tech
yeah,
has
yeah.
consumed everything.
Well, the other part of it is too, and one of the other conclusions that I come to in the book is the ultimate cult is the technology itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Next level down. Now, when I talk about a value, it's not your mission, vision, values. I used to work in the government. I think all that stuff's bullshit. Um, and by the way, Guy Kawasaki agrees with me. We've had this conversation.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Um, but from a value exchange, a value proposition, what do you think is the biggest need that consumers have that you can satisfy? What's the the big one that
The way that I like to describe it is giving them agency within the consumer marketplace. Because I think there's so many people who feel like they have no power anymore, right? I'm being bombarded all the time with all of these marketing messages. I can't get away from them. TikTok made me buy it. TikTok didn't make you buy it. I got news for you.
yeah.
TikTok didn't make you buy it. And one of the ways that we know that is that, you and I have been around for a while, and we used to talk about effective frequency. And effective frequency was 3 times, right? People needed to see your message 3 times. Now it's 7 to 13 times. So by the time you saw it on TikTok, you've probably seen it 12 times before then.
Hmm.
It's just that it finally kicked in by the time you saw it on TikTok. So you've bought into this idea that they sold it to you. That didn't happen. What's also gratifying for me is I'm starting to get messages from people that say, "I'm starting to see the patterns. I'm seeing the patterns. You saved me 6,000 bucks."
Wow. Yeah, giving them agency back. I'd almost say that's your superpower. Like
Mm,
if you're pushing back against the ad agencies, what you're
mhm.
doing is you're returning agencies to the
Right.
hands of the
Yeah.
consumer. And so that's a little exercise I take people through is kind of like, all right, who's your villain? Who's your superpower? Um,
I'm gonna think about that some more again, though. I mean, I like the exercise, and there's certainly enough villains in the place, but I think I would also like to think about it more to think about, is there a villain that I should be pushing on a little bit more?
yeah, if you can point it out, call it out. In cybersecurity, I say we're all copying each other's homework.
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
all the ads, all the creative looks and sounds and smells the same. Like
Mhm.
stop copying each other's homework, and
Yeah.
that pissed off some people on LinkedIn a couple years ago.
Genius Steals. It's the name of an agency.
From a mantra perspective, what do you think is a phrase
Mm.
that you find yourself repeating often? And then can you marry that up with a phrase that you hear from consumers or customers often? Like the
Mhm.
coded language that we use as cultural hallmarks. Um, is there something that you hear somebody say and you're like, they're just like me? We can connect on this because they get
Yeah.
my quirkiness or whatever.
Um,
These are hard to come up with.
yeah. Trying to think. You also have to realize that I did an entire podcast in the month of September, so I've been talking to a
I
lot.
cannot wait for it to launch, and yeah, we'll definitely link to it. We can come back to that. This is the
Yeah.
card I usually give to people as homework. I say, now that you're keep your ears open for that phrase that you're always repeating, because quite
Mhm.
often those become your best tagline,
Mhm.
strapline. They
Mhm.
come from your culture. Last one, I won't go into the technical stuff because it's really these cards are written more towards
Right.
technology companies. But from a proof point, a third party statistic or trend that supports your case. So what are
Um,
researchers saying about where we are?
I wouldn't frame it as researcher so much as because when I'm excuse me, when I'm thinking researchers, I'm thinking, more quantitative people. But I would say generally in terms of, sociologists and just looking at society more broadly, what we know right now is that people are there's an epidemic of loneliness right now that is not going to be served by technology. Um, there are more people who are losing their jobs and looking for more ways to make money. People are looking for ways to connect with other people. Um, I recently read a book called The Wrong Way Home, which is a book that is about cults that I didn't talk about in my book. It was written by a psychiatrist and a psychiatry professor named Arthur Dykman, and he was looking at cults right after Waco, right? So it's terrible tragedy that had happened. And he talks about Americans or, adults broadly wanting to feel like kids in the back seat. They want to feel like someone else is taking the wheel. And I think what I would add to that is this idea of infantilization. There are so many things in our culture and our society that are pushing us not to grow up. I don't think, people of my generation, we've had to because our parents have died and all of that. And so my mother's still alive. Mom, no fault there. Um, but, I don't wanna get you there where into a place before you get there. But, um but I see it in my students. I really see it in my students who are Gen Z. I mean, they're in their 20s. When I was in my 20s, I was living I didn't have a mortgage. I was living with 4 other people. So, I mean, in a small apartment in New York City, but I was living by myself. I was having to pay my rent. Nobody was helping me do it, right? I don't see my students doing that at the same age that I was doing that. And so there's this sense of not wanting to grow up, to feel like somebody else is taking the reins. And it for some people it may be Jesus is my wingman, but for most folks, it's looking to anybody who will tell them, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you," which is the cult mindset, which is what
Yeah.
opens you up for the cult mindset. But the other thing that he talks about, which is really important and the thing that I've really been focusing on most recently, is this idea of meeting people face to face. That we cannot understand what another person is going through unless we talk to them. We don't have to agree with them, but let's have a situation where we can listen to them and find out why they came to the decisions that they came to. And one of the exercises that I used to give my students, and I think I have to find a way to get them to do this again, is I tell them to create a fake Gmail account and to go on to what was then Twitter, but is now X, and start following people you would never follow, not in a million years. Make up a fake bio, but start following people. Use a fake Gmail account so you keep yourself safe. But start listening to those conversations. Engage if you feel comfortable enough to do that. And almost to a one, what they all said was, "I get it now. I understand why." they are coming to the conclusions that they're coming to. Not that they would do the same thing, but that they
Hmm.
understood why they made the decisions that they did. And I think
Yeah.
that's something we don't do enough of.
Wow, that's very powerful. Yeah, and taking on putting yourself in other people's shoes is absolutely not something that a lot of people do, especially smart people. We
Mhm.
think we've got the curse of knowledge. We think we know it all.
Right.
Um, as we wrap up, and I thank you so much for your sharing and your time. I'm gonna include a link to the books, the podcast. You mentioned a couple other people and their books. I'll include that. Are there any other references or things that you have found useful that I can include as a sort of a homework or resources cheat sheet on the end of the episode guide?
Mm. One of the things that I've been doing actually on my website, so rather than me listing them all for you, is it's sort of on a monthly basis, I'm providing books to read and podcasts to engage with on different topics based on the areas that I do research in. So, multi-level marketing, purpose washing or purpose marketing, cults, higher education. Those are all areas that I work in, and so there's if you go to my website, you will find pages where I actually list a whole um, panoply of books and documentaries and things that you can engage with on those topics.
Oh, perfect. I will definitely link into those so that people can find those. Your website, drmaraeinstein.com. I'll include that there.
Thanks.
You got this podcast that's launching.
Hmm.
I'm hoping that I get this episode out before you're too far into your podcast. But everybody should definitely go and listen. Um, just thank you so much for joining and sharing with us.
I'm so glad you found me.
Well, it was TikTok made me
Oh,
contact
there
you,
you
so.
go. There you go. One last piece of advice. If it sounds too good, it probably is.
That's right. Yep. The Princess Bride. If anyone tells you life isn't pain, they're selling something.
There you go.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been phenomenal. I cannot wait to finish the book and then read all the other ones.
Oh, thank you so much.
If you want links to the resources mentioned on the show, head on over to the episode page. And for information on booking a message therapy workshop, getting your hands on the message deck to check out my book, or just buy me a coffee, go to nerdthattalksgood.com/podcast. Until next time, happy messaging. Remember, you don't have to speak well, you only got to learn how to talk good.